What is up, guys? This is QM from the Trinity of Lift, and today I'm going to bring all of you guys my Pendulum Performage Magician deck profile for this November 2015 ban list. Now, I'm actually very happy to bring all of you guys this profile simply because this is finally a meta deck that I do possess and that I can start profiling on the channel. Considering the fact that I was playing quite a bit of rogue decks over the past 2 months, I'm just again very happy, and it's a very refreshing thing for me to go back and play a competitive deck again. And I decided to build Pepe simply because of the fact that I really didn't like how Cosmo played out. And I really felt like when I was trying to test Cosmo, I really felt that I was basically playing Clayfort 2.0, and I didn't like Clayfort either. So because of that, I just felt that Pepe was probably the best option for me because I wanted to play a Pendulum deck because I really didn't get to play any dedicated Pendulum decks before, as well as also I just really didn't like the other powerhouse of this format, which is Cosmo. So yeah, that is again why I decided to make this deck. And without further ado, let's just jump right into it. We're going to start off with the pendulums with 3 copies of Luster Pendulum, the Draco Slayer. Now, this card is $30 for a reason. Like, this card is just so busted. Like, in this deck, it's just so dumb simply because of this card and the various interactions it has with other cards in your deck and how strong it can be whenever you use it for your synchro summons for that Ignis to prominence. And again, it's just I'm borderline speechless right now with just how busted this card is in this deck. So yeah, I'm just gonna leave that description as that. So of course we have 3 Luster Pendulum. Moving on to our Performages, we have 3 copies of Performage Plush Fire because this card paired with Luster Pendulum is stupid broken. Like, yeah, it just that's the best description I can give. This is stupid broken with the Luster Pendulum. And another thing too is that this card can actually be a very strong defensive pivot in your deck, simply because if you ever are in this, or if you're ever in the situation where you have to wall up and you have to play defensive to prevent yourself from getting OTK'd or something like that, it's really cool because you can simply special summon 1 or 2 of these in defense mode, and these guys essentially count as, I believe, if I think about it like off the top of my head, like maybe 2 bodies each, simply because when they kill the Plush Fire, you're gonna special summon yet another guy. And because of that, you essentially can block like about 4 attacks, or excuse me, 2 attacks per Plush Fire, which in my opinion just adds to the versatility of this already broken card. So yeah, we have 3 copies of the Performance Plush Fire. Moving on, we have 3 copies of Performage Damage Juggler simply because we need this to help us search out all of our other performages in this deck. This is really good again because it can help us get our Plush Fire if we already do have the Luster Pendulum in our Pendulum Zone, and it can also help us search out our Mirror Conductor, which is also our Pendulum low skill, which again is really nice, and it just helps us with our consistency in this deck. Moving on, we have 2 copies of Performage Mirror Conductor. Now, I know a lot of people are running only one of this card, but I actually really like it because, again, it is our low skill that we can search off of Damage Juggler. But I also really like this card simply because whenever it's in your Pendulum Zone, you can basically use it to be a kind of like a shield and sword, if you guys remember that old card. And I'm also running number 103 Ragda Zero in my extra deck, and it actually has a really, really cool interaction with the Performance Mirror Conductor, simply because you can use Mirror Conductor as a scale to change your opponent's monster's stats. And when you do, if you can make Ragda Zero, you can essentially use the Ragda Zero to destroy that monster that you used Mirror Conductor on, and essentially turn Mirror Conductor into spot removal, which in my opinion is really cool. And again, that's why I wanted to have the copies of Mirror Conductor. Another reason why I wanted to have 2 is if I ever get the scale of Luster Pendulum and Mirror Conductor, I wanted to have an option of being able to use Luster Pendulum's effect at least once for this card to get me a free +1. So that is why I also have the 2 copies of Mirror Conductor in this deck. Moving on to the final 2 performages we are running. I'm running 1 copy of Trick Clown and 1 copy of Hat Tricker. Hat Tricker's in here obviously because this is going to be a card that you can search to help you get it to rank 4s, that you don't have to commit to your Pendulum Summon to get onto board. So it can kind of help you play around certain back row. And I also run the 1 copy of Performance Trick Clown, again, because I actually use this more or less as a Monster Reborn for any of the performages rather than itself. Because if you ever use any of your Pendulum performages for an Xyz summon, they're obviously going to go to grave. And the cool thing is that Trick Clown can get other performages from the grave besides itself as well. So you can essentially use it as a Monster Reborn for things like your Plush Fire that might have ended up in grave, which is, again, really, really cool. So that'll be it for all of the performages in our deck. Moving on to the Pendulum Magician aspect of our deck, we're going to start off with 3 copies of Skullcrobat Joker because this card makes the Pendulum Magician engine a little bit more consistent, obviously. I also should mention that this is probably the only relevant normal summon that we have in the deck. I mean, like, you can normal summon other cards in this deck, but this is the only thing that will actually advance your game state when normal summoned. So, again, that's something to keep note of. And again, it's just here mainly for the consistency of the Pendulum Magician engine. Moving on to said Pendulum Magicians, we have 3 copies of the Wisdom Eye Magician, simply because this is the best one that we want to see as much as possible. And I also should mention that in this specific deck, you can actually leave Wisdom Eye as the high scale simply because it's a scale 5, and you'll be wanting to just summon level 4s constantly in this deck, and because of that, it does fall into that scale 5 ring. So even if you do Pendulum Call, it's actually it's pretty darn awesome, in my opinion, that you can still use the Wisdom Eye as the high scale, and that you're not forced to try and get a Dragon Pit onto the board, because you really don't need that high scale of Dragon Pit, and the high scale of Wisdom Eye is just fine in this deck. So again, that's why I really actually do like 3 Wisdom Eye in this deck. Moving on to the Vanilla Magicians, we have the 2 copies of the Dragon Pulse Magician, as well as the 1 copy of Dragon Pit. Again, like I said, you really don't need Dragon Pit in this deck, because it's a pretty bad draw. But the thing is, you really want to have still 1 copy in the deck, because you want to have the option for Wisdom Eye, because you can just simply use Wisdom Eye's effect, grab the Dragon Pit to be your high skill, and then you can still get that +1 if you ever Pendulum summon that Wisdom Eye again. So again, I still wanted to have the 1 Dragon Pit in here for that option. And then I also have the 2 copies of Dragon Pulse, simply because it's another low scale, and also because it is a low scale, again, it has the very same interaction as Mirror Conductor does with Luster Pendulum, where if I have 1 Dragon Pulse in my low scale, I really want to have the ability to use Luster Pendulum's effect on it so that I can get another Dragon Pulse Magician. So again, that's why I have 2 of that, and that'll round off all of our Pendulum Magicians in this deck. Moving on to the other cards, we're going to go right into our King of the Feral Imp search targets. We have 1 copy of Masked Chameleon and 1 copy of Performer Pal Part Naga. Part Naga is in here simply because it's a searchable low scale from King of the Feral Imp, so I really wanted to have that option. And I only run 1 copy of Masked Chameleon simply because you never want to draw into it, as with how this deck can just turn out rank 4 is just like nothing. You can usually just make King of the Feral Imps almost on all of your turn 1s, and because of that, I'd rather draw other things rather than the Masked Chameleon. And again, because it's easily searchable off of said King of the Feral Imps, I really felt that multiple copies of the Chameleon was not necessary. So yeah, that'll be it for all of the King of the Feral Imp targets. And then finally, we also run 1 copy of Gem Knight Garnet because I am running Brilliant Fusions. So that will be it for the entire monster lineup. Moving on to the spells, we're going to start off with 3 copies of Pendulum Call. Now, this is going to be the card that can help you consistently set up your pendulum scales, or at the very least, you can just get you can just use this to get 2 Pendulum Magicians into your hand to use as Pendulum Summon fodder, which again is really good because it helps you get into those rank 4s that you need to make. So again, we have 3 copies of Pendulum Call for the consistency as well as for better power plays that we can get in the later game. Moving on, I'm also running 3 copies of the Brilliant Fusion. Now, I know I'm only running 1 Gem Knight Garnet, but we are running Dagusto Emerald in the extra deck. So if we ever do run into the weird situation where we ever have to resolve a 2nd Brilliant Fusion or a 3rd, we do have the Dagusto Emerald as an option to help us recycle that 1 copy of Gem Knight Garnet. Now, I also will mention that I really do like the Brilliant Fusions in this deck because it's like a Rhoda for your Performages, simply because you can make Seraph Knight and then you can send the Damage Juggler with the Garnet, and then when you do that, you can obviously search out any of your other Performages with that Damage Juggler. So again, I really do like Brilliant Fusion because again, it's like a pseudo Rhoda in this deck. So again, we have 3 of that. Then, moving on, we also have 3 copies of Instant Fusion because I really like this card in this deck. Like, I know a lot of other lists are only running 1 or 2 of this, but I really feel 3 is a lot better because this can just elongate your plays and make your boards a lot more strong whenever you can make a board, plus having the option to use Instant Fusion. So that's why I wanted to have 3 copies of this, because I just really feel that this is still a very strong choice in this deck. Moving on, I also have 1 copy of Foolish Burial to function similarly to the Brilliant Fusions in that it can be just a simple Rhoda for any of our other Performages. So again, I wanted to have this copy of Foolish Burial in here as an option. And then finally, for the last couple of spells, we have 2 copies of Wavering Eyes. I don't like 3 in the main because you're not only going to play Pendulum decks, and because of that, I really felt like this card can help you just brick more in matches where you don't need it. And so that's why I only main 2. I do side 1 other copy though, if I ever do need the 3rd copy for mirror matches. But again, I'm a lot more comfortable with just maining 2 for now. And then finally, for the last 3 spells, we have 3 copies of Upstart Goblin because I like me my Upstart Goblins and whatnot. So yeah, that'll round us off from our 40 card main deck. Moving on to the extra deck, we of course start off with the big daddy himself. We have 2 copies of Ignista Prominence, the Blasting Draco Slayer. Now, like I said with Luster Pendulum, this card is broken. Like, this card is dumb simply because of the fact that you can special summon a Draco Slayer, which is going to be Luster Pendulum, from your deck with one of its effects, and then you can just simply pop any Pendulum monster on the field, not just your own, and then spin back any card on your opponent's side of the field for essentially free. Because again, even if you do not have something to blow up with Ignister per se, I guess, you can still use its effect to summon the Luster Pendulum on by its side, and then blow up the same Luster Pendulum that you just summoned for Ignister's effect, and just basically make its cost free, while you're just negging your opponent once. So no matter what, Ignister's almost always going to be a straight +1 whenever you activate its effect, which in my opinion is pretty darn insane. So yeah, we have 2 copies of Ignister Prominence. For the other level 8 synchro we are running, I have 1 copy of Cyframe Lord Omega, just because this card is another really strong level 8 synchro. And again, just having the option to potentially recycle your damage jugglers from your banished pile to get +1s every turn is never a bad thing either. So yeah, we have 1 copy of Cyframe Lord Omega. Then, moving on through the rank 4s, we have 1 copy of Daigusto Emerald to help us recycle cards that we want to recycle. We have 1 copy of Number 101 just for more monster removal. We have 1 copy of Magister Paladin because it can help us get to where we want to be if we can ever make it. We have 1 copy of Castel, again for spot removal. We have 1 copy of Diamond Dire to help us punch through back rows that we might otherwise be scared of. We have 1 copy of Abyss Dweller for Cosmo. We have 1 copy of Number 103 Ragnar Zero because, like I said, with Mirror Conductor, this card is really good if you ever have Mirror Conductor as your low scale. Then we also have the 1 copy of Performage Trapeze Magician for helping us with our OTKs. And finally, for the last Xyz monster, we have 1 copy of King of the Feral Imps, because this can get us into our Ignisters by searching Mass Chameleon, or it can get us the low scale by searching out Performer Pal Part Naga. So yeah, that'll be it for the Xyz monsters. And then, of course, for the last couple of fusions, we have 2 copies of Elder Entity Norden to help us with our instant fusion plays. And then we also have the 1 copy of Gem Knight Seraphonite for our brilliant fusions. And also Yusei Token. So yeah, guys, that'll be it for my Pendulum Performage Magician deck profile for this November 2015 ban list. Again, like I said at the start of this video, this is still very much a work in progress. I'm also going to look to be updating this deck post Breakers of Shadow, which is going to be a lot of fun because my wallet is going to be really sore after that set release. But still, I'm very much hoping to bring you guys an updated version of this deck when that set releases. But again, for now, I'm still really enjoying this deck, and I'm very happy that I decided to pick this deck up. Now, again, hope you all very much did enjoy this deck profile, and as always, this is QREM from the Trinity of Lift, and I'll see all of you guys later. Peace out.